This is Empowered Human Academy. Welcome home.
I think that that's probably the key there, is probably starting with like what sounds terrible to you and going ahead and realizing you don't have to do that. Because I think we spend a lot of time thinking we have to do something like someone else.
This is about love. This is about light. This is about the idea that you have everything you will ever need.
And this life of yours, this is where you grow, you expand, and you remember who you really are.
I'm Abe.
I'm Isaac.
In Empowered Human Academy, we join with humans of all kinds to feel the inspiration that can only come with empowered living.
The stories you hear today are unique, but the energy you hear today belongs to you too. So, with hearts wide open, let's begin.
Hello everyone, Jacob. Hi, so excited to interview you today. How are you?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here too. I'm good. I am refreshed and rejuvenated. Perfect time to do this.
Awesome. I've been wanting to get you on this podcast for a long time. So I'm glad that we found a time that worked with our crazy schedules, especially the last couple months. So thanks for taking the time out. So we're just going to get right into it.
Initial question. We each carry with us like a handful of adjectives that we toss out readily when we're introducing ourselves to someone else. I want you to throw all of them out and think about who you are to yourself. What words of identity do you choose when it's just you by yourself thinking about who you actually are?
Honestly, one of the best words I used to describe myself, and normally I think like people think of this as an insult, but I don't, is that I'm super stubborn. And driven, I guess, would be a nice way to say it. But I appreciate when I look in the mirror, I see someone who's really stubborn and has like never let anyone else like kind of influence decisions in my life or where I feel like I'm headed. So stubborn would be one of them.
Awesome.
And then I think the other one is receptive, and that, again, both good and bad. Sometimes I'm over receptive, but I enjoy being someone who I feel like can walk into a room and feel like I know what's going on, even if I don't know a single person there.
Totally. That's a hell of a duality right there, stubborn and receptive. I think like some people might define those as opposites. How do they work together?
I think it just decides whenever I want to turn it on. But I think that specifically with like the receptiveness, I've had to learn when to scale that back. It was a few years ago, I started working with someone who started off reading my tarot cards, and then we started talking about a lot more stuff. And she looked at me and said, you don't have to carry the weight of everyone's burdens on your shoulders. And I grew up being that person for even people in my family. And whenever she said that, she was like, I need to teach you how to turn it off. And we talked through a couple of activities around that. And that made me realize that kind of with the flip side of that, the stubbornness, they do work hand in hand, just maybe not at the same time.
Okay. So it's about knowing when to play one or the other given where you're at in the moment.
For sure. I mean, I don't know how into astrology we all are, but I'm a Scorpio. So like deceptiveness and the ability to manipulate a situation is another strong point.
Okay, cool. So this podcast is about empowerment broadly, right? So holding everything that we just said, because we'll come back to it. What does an empowered Jacob look like?
An empowered Jacob is someone who is given creative freedom, someone who's been given like guidelines, but not step-by-step directions. Okay. And someone who has been told, if you mess up, this is how we'll fix it. Not just telling me like, oh, it's okay if you mess up, but letting me know the steps back. I'm the type of person who I never want to mess up. Again, like we're talking about stubbornness here, but if someone can tell me how it's okay for me to mess up, I'm fine. I'll fall on my face. But I think that's it. It's just someone who especially in a part where I'm empowered, but like working under someone or working under a certain like time crunch or whatever. It's just someone who has a little bit of guideline, but for the most part is told, do whatever you need to do to get it done.
Feel that. Yeah.
So with your stubbornness and what it feels like to be empowered in your mind and in your life, like, do you feel like when you are, you have the agency to be who you are in your like, in your awareness and your stubbornness, do you feel empowered in that? And, when are there like kind of red flags that you're not feeling empowered in that?
I feel like, and probably with most gifts we have been given or gifts we have worked on, it didn't start off that way. I feel like And, my stubbornness, for instance, probably is very trauma induced, and working through that then made it graduate into something that I appreciate and something I can work with. And so I think that that's probably where I have graduated to within the last few years, because before it's like I knew those things about me, but I never projected them. And what was the second part of the question? I already forgot it.
So, when do you feel disempowered?
Okay.
I feel like,
or if I can take it this way.
Yeah.
So you talked about situations in which you are given freedom. How do you make sure that you get what you need, right? Like, how would stepping into your own empowerment look like?
Yeah. Okay. I knew where I was. So whenever I didn't feel like I could own my stubbornness / all the rest of it, the one thing I never did was advocate for myself. And now I know going into a situation, any situation, whether it's work, whether it's friends, whether it's with my husband, whatever it is, I have to say at the very beginning, this is what I'm going to need from this. This is where I'm going to struggle with this. And this is where I need you to show up for me in this. And I haven't always been that way. I mean, literally, we're talking maybe the past 4 or 5 years. And I spent most of my career in retail where you just constantly get yelled at by strangers. And it was like the worst ego thing in the entire world. And after moving out of that and moving into a situation where I actually do own things and control things rather than being put in situations where people pretend like I own and control things, I've learned that advocating for myself has to happen first.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I resonate with that super hard. My favorite relationships in business and otherwise are ones where we're all very clear that we each get to claim what we need from each other and that we can each trust each other for that dialogue. So I feel that super hard. How does that play into your position now? Like, you are in a position of leadership. So what kinds of, what do you do as you're cultivating this environment for yourself and the people around you?
Yeah, I mean, boundaries come to mind first, like setting up the idea of, so in my job, I'm the director of marketing at the new Primal, and we're like a food brand. And so going from being the like kind of content manager person to like stepping up a few steps to now where I own that experience and have a small team that reports to me. I know that going into it, what I owe them is the exact same boundaries that I just talked about in the situation where I advocated for myself, because I have to be able to tell them, or I have to be able to set the example for them to do the same. And when I do that for them and I show up for them, mostly again by just advocating for me, they replicate that and become a team that actually wants to work with me rather than people who feel like they're just reporting to someone.
Hell yeah.
Totally. And that's how I feel like you run your team as well.
Oh, yeah. Did you see my raised hands?
Yeah. Super transparent and super real, for sure. You talk a lot about how this hasn't always been a thing for you. Share a little bit about your journey in owning your truth in that.
Yeah, I grew up being the shy, quiet, queer kid. And, of course, it's like the quieter you are, then hopefully no one will notice you. And to be honest, very early on, like popularity in high school came really easy for me, even though I didn't want it. And I was trying to like play, I was trying to stay in the shadows. And I guess I just have a really good personality because I couldn't stay there. And so I think then when it became time to like start a career, and my first foray into a career was being a retail manager, I think I knew like the steps of doing things, but I didn't actually believe in myself enough to actually think I deserved those steps of doing things.
Totally.
And when I spent 11 years with one particular company, it's J. Crew, and it got to a point where I realized that I was just a number. And it was really hard for me as like a very outgoing person who's still very much an introvert, but still very much, an extrovert, but also very much an introvert. I was like, I got to get out of here because at the end of the day, this is going to suck me dry because this isn't rewarding. I'm helping a company be rewarded. I'm not actually getting fulfilled in any way. And actually left to go to another retail company, but at the time started working kind of on and off with the new Primal, who I knew through Whole30. They actually gave me a scholarship to be a Whole30 coach. And so I'd worked for them like on and off for like a year of like, hey, you want to do a takeover? Hey, you want to do this on social media? Yeah, sure, cool, let's do it. And then a hurricane was coming through Charleston, which is where the new Primal is based. And one of the managing partners, Melissa, who I now report to, reached out and was like, we're going to lose power. Do you mind just like running our DMs? Like, we've never given that to anybody, but I don't want to like use my phone battery on this. And you know this audience, like you've done our takeovers and all that type of stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I ended up really enjoying doing that because I think the part of me that really likes giving back to other people, I felt like, oh, I like being able to communicate for a brand like this. And so had a lot of fun with it. She reached out to me afterwards and was like, honestly, it was so great to like give that up for a weekend. Do you want to do that for us like part-time or something while you do your other job? And sure, yeah. And then over the course of a month, it was like, do you want to work here full time? And I'm like, well, all I've ever known is retail management. I mean, I used to run teams of like 100 people. And now all of a sudden it's like, do you want to be working this team of like 10 people and do something that basically you're the only one who's going to be doing it? And I was like, hell yeah. Like I am terrified, but at this point, I know I can create something fulfilling. I can create something rewarding. I can use those strengths that I have to my advantage. And I struggled a lot at first because I'm not used to working like that. And I think I'm doing a good job now.
Awesome. Absolutely. And I think you've helped the new Primal like become such a powerhouse in the Whole30 community and beyond. I mean, I love seeing you guys in Whole Foods and all the stores. I'm like, oh, that's such a great team. And you, like you said, you like being the face of the brand. And I feel like when I think of the new Primal, I think of you, and we just love y'all. And forever, for anyone who's listening, y'all should definitely check it out. Not sponsored, literally giving things away for free with this brand. So how did you get over your fear in that client facing, in that new position?
Or if I could ask it in a different way, what was your relationship to the fear? Like, how did you work with it over time?
So if we took a few steps back and we talk about the retail world, I was a very rewarded person for my position. And most of that is because I always did what everyone said. If they said, hey, we're going to do this new thing, Jacob's store is always like number one, like let's put it on his store. Like that was the person I was. I was very much a yes person. And I was a yes person because everything was so structured, right? It's like, oh, it doesn't work, then okay, we go back to this. But what I had to learn once I stepped into basically a startup business is there's no structure. There's not a lot of planning. If you want to plan, you create the plan. And so what I really had to do was figure out what I was afraid of and then plan backwards from that. And to be honest, the thing that intimidated me the most was proving my worth for a company being a remote employee, because I'm based in Atlanta, the company is there. And I'm always like, oh, I want to make sure they know I'm working. I want to make sure they know I'm doing a good job. And so I had to figure out a way to reconcile that in my head while also communicating like, hey, this is what I got done today, without driving everyone bananas, because I could very easily do that as well. But my biggest fear was that no one's here to see me do this job, right? I very much in many ways need that like instant gratification of someone seeing me do a good job. And that doesn't happen here. It's me and this desk and that's it.
Yeah, that's super salient. That's like a large chunk of, desk workers in America right now. We're all at home, right? So what does that mean for you? Like for somebody who likes the feedback of being seen, and there's nothing wrong with that, but what do you do with that in a situation like what we're all in right now?
I think of it like when we all have our own love languages, but then like our partners and friends have love languages, and you have to learn their love languages as well. Totally. And I had to learn what positive feedback looks like in this situation. I had to learn what a good job looks like. Mm-hmm. And, for me now, like our CEO and founder, Jason, who, I can crack up with and like make a joke with. that's good. When I think about in retail world, like that doesn't happen, especially in the size of the business that I was in. So I have to look at it like, oh, that's a win, that I have such a close relationship. I can pick up the phone and text him a joke and it's appropriate,
Yeah.
Or at the same time, maybe with someone else that I, or that I more closely report to, that I can say, hey, I actually can't handle this today, so I'm going to do it another day. And for them to say, oh yeah, that's fine, means I'm doing a good enough job that they trust me with that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not the reporting I'm used to seeing where it's like, oh, you're up an X%. It's we trust you with this, and that's enough.
Totally. Which and when you have that trust, it's so liberating and freeing to be creative, right? Versus someone kind of overlooking everything that you do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see you then like making sure that you have all the inputs that you need in order to be like fulfilled in your day, right? Is that a fair summary of what you just told me?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's still something I'm probably building out and working on. My first year, I really struggled with it. And, it took me a while to figure out how to coast on that. And now I'm sitting here, I have my little notebook with little notes and my big notebook with notes from the little notebook. And I'm like, okay, I have my system now. And now I feel accomplished. And now I know I'm doing a good job. And it took me a while to figure those systems out. But yes.
That makes sense. Let's talk more about this, like systems of your life, right? Because if we go back to the very beginning of this conversation, you introduced yourself as somebody who identifies strongly with being both stubborn and receptive, which is cool because to me that identifies an entire spectrum. And the fact that you're so comfortable with this tells me that you know how to move around on it deliberately as needed. And so that coupled with what you just told me about systems, tell me more about the system of your life. Tell me about how you know to steer in any given direction at a given moment. Tell me about what you need, etc.
I learned a lot of this actually from Whole30. And to give a little bit of like context, so my husband is a computer engineer, so everything is very structured for him. I create data systems, they do this is how they work, and da 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 da. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I think I've worn this, not literally, but I may be like, I think I've worn this t-shirt 2 days in a row. Like that's how my brain, kind of works. And so, I have to figure out a way to create systems that still reward a very creative part of my brain.
Cool.
And so like I was talking about the little notebook, it's a little notebook that has a Betty White logo on it. And it says, "White it down," because number one, I love the Golden Girls, but also I feel like, okay, I'm doing something really fun here. And then it goes somewhere boring later. But when I'm building out, I guess, routines, I think about if-then strategies, which are from Atomic Habits by James Clear, but I was introduced to them by Whole30 because I had to think of food that way. Like if I'm going out to this restaurant, then I need to make sure I bring this so I can have it. And so I started thinking about how if-then strategies can like affect every part of my life. And there's very literal ones. Like I was actually talking to my Facebook group the other night. I was like, if it's a night where I put retinol on my skin, then I make sure to use this specific product. Like there's very literal ones like that. But then also it's like, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I need to make sure I communicate this to my boss. And having those systems feels very protective for me. And sometimes it means writing them out. Like here's 50 if-then situations that have nothing to do with food and more to do with, my own safety. Oh my, there's my dog gagging in the background. Sorry.
All good.
How often do you have to revert back to those if-then statements?
I never really have to change them. I think it's more about sometimes I graduate from them. Sometimes I don't need that safety net anymore. And again, it's the point of that is automation. I think an example I gave in Melissa Urban's podcast was that we have one specific light is connected to an app called If This Then That. And if it's going to rain that day, the light bulb turns blue. It's the only option it has. There's no work in that. It just does that. And I think that's the point we're all trying to get to, where it's like, if this response happens, then do this. For the first little bit, you have to think about it. You have to look at your list and say, okay, if this happens, then this. But eventually you get to the point where it's just automatic and you know what you're doing. Well,
and that's like when mastery comes into play, when things are so subconscious now that you don't even have to consider, oh my gosh, I have to think about every single thing. And with the Whole30, I mean, I'm doing Whole30 right now and it's my 4th time doing it. And it's like, oh, this is easier now because I don't have to think about, oh my gosh, what happens if I'm on the road and and I'm hungry? I just know to bring fruit and epic bars. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. Speaking of Whole30, you were the 2019 Whole30 Coach of the Year. Can you share a little bit with our listeners about like what that is, what kind of Whole30 is in general, what the program is, and what your role has been in Whole30?
Yeah, so Whole30 itself is like a 30-day science experiment where you're going to eliminate certain food groups that tend to be problematic within our guts or our like mental responses, and then you systematically reintroduce them to see whether they work for you or they don't work for you. You may find out things affect your sleep, your skin, your emotions, allergies, whatever. But it's basically just a long-term science. I shouldn't even say long-term, but 30 days seems long. But science experiment. It is not a weight loss diet and is not a long-term diet situation at all. It's literally an experiment. And I found Whole30 in 2013. A friend of mine did it for her skin and was like, hey, I think you might enjoy this. And I don't even know why she recommended it to me, to be honest, now that I think about it. So I started that night at 11 p.m. and I, within like 2 weeks, was completely inhaler free. I had been on an albuterol inhaler my entire life. And was like, oh, okay, this is something that's going to work for me, you know? And I honestly never thought I would be involved in the community. But then about 2 years later, like in 2015, I posted, or no, it would have been 2014, I posted a picture for St. Patrick's Day of some green veggies. And I was like, you know, instead of dyeing your food green, you could just eat green food. And Melissa Urban, I know, and I saw it somewhere. I was straight up copying, but Melissa Urban commented on it. And at the time, like I had never interacted with her. And it made me realize like, oh, the levels that I think are like this far between us, where there's like 30 steps, social media actually makes that a lot closer. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do something with them. And so I started, you know, paying attention, commenting on stuff in the community, even like being on the forum, even though it was mostly like an older generation, and decided I wanted to become a coach and became one. And I was one of the first queer coaches. I think there was one more before me. And one of the things I've always said is, you know, and we all know this, but being queer people coming into spaces that were mostly designed for straight people is always super intimidating. And you either do one of two things. You either completely shy away or you take over. And for me, it was like, okay, I have to take over. And so I made it a point to make sure that I was very present in our coaches group, and I tried to communicate with everyone. And of course, that has slowed down somewhat as the coaches, I was number 27 and now we have over 200. So, okay. But the community responded to me well, for the most part, you know, and when it came time to talk about things that were harder, like when we talk about social justice and when we talk about, you know, politics even, mm-hmm. I could very easily give a queer perspective and sometimes a marginalized perspective while always noting the fact that I'm a white man first. And I think that when I think about why I won that award, I think, don't get me wrong, I did a lot in the community, but I think one of the biggest reasons why and the biggest factor was that I gave a lot of myself to that community. That year specifically, I tried to make sure that everyone understood where different voices come from and how our experiences are not the same. You know, with like the saying, like my heroes are not your heroes type situation. And I think that if I got the entry, so I saw what people commented. So, I mean, people did say stuff about that, but I also think I'm a very helpful person too. So
Totally. And what was it like navigating a kind of straight environment as a queer person, as a coach?
So the thing about Whole30 is there's a few different communities. So we have the Whole30 community, then we have the coaches community, and then we have the Whole30 recipes community. And there are three very different groups. So Whole30 is, and when you think about people who follow the Whole30 page, it's people who know what the program is. They're paying attention to the verbiage behind it, the reasonings, the whys, all of that. And it also means when, especially now that Whole30 is talking about social justice more, it means that they know where Whole30 falls on all that. And of course, that's not always been the case. We're talking about things that have only been a year in the making. The Whole30 coaches group is a little more dialed in. We actually get to have those conversations before they become discussions in Whole30. We get to be a little more vulnerable with each other and break things down more. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is Whole30 recipes, which people who follow Whole30 recipes have no idea what Whole30 is. They just think it's a healthy recipe thing. So when I talk about when I came into the program, it's like getting into the coaches was fine. Like I said, it was number 27. So it was very easy to like stake my spot in there. Getting into the community was a little scary because it's like, okay, we want you to do a takeover. And it's my first like big takeover. And, you know, while I know that I project as a queer person, and that's fine. I've, you know, never hidden that. And then going on to Whole30 recipes and being a queer person is a totally different experience, because then those people have a lot more opinions, and have, you know, said some pretty terrible things. But I guess what I'm trying to say is there were levels of entry, and the actual Whole30 community and the coaches, it was fine to get into. But I also recognize my experience was probably easier because, again, first and foremost, I'm a white person, and you know, it would have been different if I was probably a queer person of color.
Sure, that makes sense. The question of how we carry our identities with us, like queer, for example, is something that's always of interest to me. And I'm also like white, cis, straight passing man, frankly, and that makes me feel sometimes like not qualified to even ask these questions. Like, what is it like to be, like, for me, what is it like to be gay in this community? As if that was the most important thing about me. But there are undeniably these things that make us who we are, attributes that are different than, you know, the greater community. How do you think about what defines you in these ways in terms of identities as you go about like the leadership positions that you currently hold, like with New Primal, different communities that you roll in, all of this?
So it's interesting because I 100% understand what you're saying, but then the flip side of this is, and this is my brain as well, where I'm like, but if I didn't show up as this person and people always thought that queerness looked like this, then I'm also doing a disservice to the community. Totally. And so it is important that I show up queer first and make people understand that this marginalized community isn't just made up of the characters you see on TV, like, that are very much caricatures, and not so much now anymore, but 10 years ago. And you know, the thing is, I was thinking about this earlier in the conversation. The thing at work that has never happened is I've never once felt, I've never felt like my queerness has ever been an issue. It's never been something I wanted to hide. And I know that I'm very, very privileged for that. But I also know that it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone agrees with it. I think again, you come into a space, you either shy away or you take over. Totally. Yeah. And, you know, I don't think people are going to talk back to me about, you know, my own queerness. But that being said, I know that not everyone can do that. Not everyone can walk into a space and be the loudest person in the room. So, you know, I think, and I've actually been working on something talking about coming out, and, you know, and this kind of works the same way. It's like you can be out but not out at work. I definitely realize that I'm very privileged to work in a space where I do get to be out and I get to be my authentic self. And that, like, when we do company holiday retreats, like, my husband gets to come with me, and, you know, like, that type of stuff. But I will say, when I think back to previous of this, when I was in retail, I did hide it a lot. And it was because I was selling to people, right? So I had to be what I thought people wanted. And what people didn't want, in my opinion, or what I thought, was, you know, a queer kid. I for a large part of my career, worked in a very conservative area, and, you know, I didn't know how to be queer in that area.
Totally. That makes sense. Let's take this over to, like, director of marketing, right? At New Primal. If we're talking about selling and giving people what do you think they want, especially in a context which is explicitly about, you know, improving the standing of your company in the eyes of your consumers, what does authenticity and not just create an image, what does that whole thing look like? How do we apply the concept of empowerment to a position where your job actually is to market to people?
It actually goes back to the beginning when we talk about the clarity of, like, expectations, because authenticity in particular is something we have talked about so much at work, where I've said, you know, hey, for instance, we'll say in these situations where like the company puts my face out there. A lot of that's because I don't mind being on camera and I can talk to a camera and I can carry a room. But what I never want to do is look like the token queer person either.
Totally.
And so we have to be very deliberate in those conversations and make sure that like, okay, in this situation, it might not be best. And here's the reason for that. Like, let's be super honest about it. And it hasn't really come up a lot, mostly because I'm on a team of people who don't necessarily enjoy being on camera. But I think that this conversation would be different if we were probably talking to the person I report to, because I'm sure her process is so different. Mine is I show up and I do what I'm supposed to do while also doing what I want to do.
Totally.
But I know the way that we talk about, for instance, like, racial justice is super, super important always. But right now we're seeing brands talk about it more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when we approach like, okay, we're going to talk about this partnership we have coming up, or we're going to do this volunteer thing. One of the biggest takeaways I took actually from a seminar that we went to for racial/food justice was, oh my God, I forgot the thing. But it was basically saying like, don't be here for charity, be here to do the work. Mm-hmm. And so I think about that a lot when we talk about racial justice or any type of social justice. Mm-hmm. It's okay, is our purpose for doing this for a pat on the back, or are we actually doing something and making a difference? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is for pats on the back, and we all do things for pats on the back. Mm-hmm. But we have to be honest about where that comes from. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's showing up authentically, like you were talking about.
Yes. Solidarity, not charity was the phrase.
Totally. And that takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of self-awareness, and not everyone is there. Has your journey in becoming more attuned to your needs and your desires connected to the more authentic you have become as a person?
Yeah, I think that, yes. And a large part of that was something a therapist said to me, actually, was that you spent your whole life waiting for people to validate you externally because no one ever validated you internally. Mm-hmm. And so I have spent, especially the past year, focusing on what internal validation looks like, mm-hmm. because I always got praise for my grades or the way I dressed or how funny I was or things like that. But I never got that internal validation specifically around my queer identity until I was on social media. I mean, that's, I think, why I'm so comfortable there, because I finally had people telling me it was okay to be me.
And what does your internal validation look like in the last year?
A lot of it just comes from, about a year, well, it's been over a year now. I guess we'll relate this to body. I was I was heavier than I am now. And I knew that heaviness wasn't the issue. It was everything else that was contributing to that for me. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of shame around my body. And then finally, when I started thinking about internal validation, I was like, here I am, equating external worth based on my body, and it actually says nothing about who I am. And so I started doing this thing where I shared shirtless selfies on Instagram stories, and it was terrifying for me because I was the heaviest I'd ever been. And I was like, but if I'm going to tell other people that whoever they are on the inside matters more than the outside, I actually have to walk this walk. Mm-hmm. And what was funny is over the course of that, I started oh my God, I actually look really good. And this was 60 pounds, 70 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I dig this. And then as I started to internally validate myself with that and started saying I love my body and I love that it can move, I love that it can do this, I started pushing myself and I started focusing on what does recovery in my body look like? Instead of just punishing it with exercise, how do I also balance it with recovery? Also, where does sleep play into this? Where does stress play into this? And because of that, I did change my body. I don't think I made it better. I don't think that there's one that's better or worse, but I did change my body in the way that I aimed to change it, because I focus more on the inside part of me than what the outside looked like.
That totally makes sense. There have been a couple times in this conversation where you've talked about moments of clarity in which you've made a decision, and it seems kind of instant. Like with Whole30, you said, I'm going to go do something with that.
At 11 p.m.
And with the selfies, this is a thing that you decided to do. What are these points of decision like for you?
It's me 100% recognizing that I'm stubborn. I can either do it now or I can sit on it and do it later, but I'm going to do it regardless. Where's actually a really good example where I'm sitting in my bedroom right now, which the walls are white. The walls were navy or gray 2 weeks ago. At Friday, I posted on social media, like, I think I'm going to paint my room. Like, I think I want to paint it white. What do you think? The poll wasn't even done. I had gone to Home Depot, bought the primer and the paint that I decided. Before the poll was even done, I stayed up until 11 p.m. painting these walls that night. And I'm talking primed them 2 coats and painted, and then woke up in a freshly painted room. I was like, oh my God, you guys all said yes, thank God, because I did it, you know?
Totally. I love that.
Oh my gosh, this seems like a very efficient way to live, no?
Well, and when I was thinking about that, I was like, okay, I have free time right now, right? Like I could use my time to do these other things and then paint this weekend, or I could do it now and not have to paint this weekend and actually enjoy my weekend. Like, I think I do that a lot, where I basically bargain with myself over like, what do I want to do versus what do I need to do? And then how does that affect me later? And that was a situation where I was like, just power through this. I said till 11, it was probably 10 o'clock because I still went to bed at 10:30, I think. But, you know, as long as it doesn't impede on those if-then situations where like I go to bed at 10:30, I get up at 6:30, like those things, I don't care. I'll do whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. So again, like you've talked about like supposed to do versus want to do. And earlier in the conversation, I've been harkening back to a lot of things, but you're saying a lot of consistent stuff. You talked about like taking care of what you're supposed to do while also making sure that you're doing what you want to do. And there are a lot of, again, these systems that you're using. And I find this fascinating given that you self-identify also as a very creative person who isn't maybe intrinsically systems oriented. So what would you say to somebody who also comes from that like very free-flowing creative background who may have never tried any of these, you know, systems, the if-then kind of thing?
I mean, if I had to say it really quick, I'd say if I can do it, you can do it. But more than anything, I just want to say that like it really just comes down to figuring out what doesn't work more than anything. What doesn't work for me is the thought of like journaling every night. What doesn't work for me is an electronic calendar. What doesn't work for me are these things. So then I think about what do I enjoy doing, and I start to build out backwards. I'm like a very layered when I think about when I'm putting together projects and stuff. I think about things like, okay, here's where I'm stuck. It's layer 3 right here, you know, and I need to figure that out before I move on to the next one. And so I think that that's probably the key there, is probably starting with like what sounds terrible to you and going ahead and realizing you don't have to do that. Because I think we spend a lot of time thinking we have to do something like someone else.
Yes, that's why I've been able to succeed at all of my Whole30s, because I don't like some vegetables and I just won't eat them. Like, it's simple. Or like I feel like we've just put ourselves, I think humans have the capacity to put themselves in situations and do things that they don't like to do. And that's a big reason why they're miserable, is because they're doing things they don't want to do. That's what I've seen a lot in patterns. And even I've done that in the past. I'm like, wait, I don't need to do this. Like, why do I want this? And oftentimes when I look inward, it's because I'm trying to match someone else's expectations of what I need to be doing, which I'm like, fuck that. That's like so, it feels like imprisonment. So you are really, I feel like you're so decisive, and like, you know, when you make a decision like Isaac was talking about, you just fucking make it. And that's like really admirable, because I feel like there are so many times when I've been like in the past, or a lot of people are like, I don't know what to, they just weigh all the different decisions and weigh all the options and they can't make a decision. If you were giving, you know, your clients or your Whole30 coaching clients some advice, like, or just any human really, how do people become more confident in their decision making?
I think that one of the things that we think in this world is that a lot of things are permanent, and they're not. And we get stuck on this idea of if I make a decision, I'm stuck with it. And that isn't really how it works. I have a really good friend, and she would not mind me dragging her about this, but she takes forever to make a decision. And actually, it was funny when we decided we wanted to redo the bedroom, I was like, okay, cool. So we need a new mattress. And literally within 4 hours, we had found a mattress, ordered it, and it's on the way. I told my friend, hey, by the way, we ordered a mattress from here. She goes, oh, I ordered one from there too. I didn't like it, so I sent it back. And she goes, and then I ordered this one, I didn't like it, so I sent it back. And then I ordered this one, I didn't send it back. And I'm like, I was like, at some point we have to realize we just want to find things wrong with things, you know? Like we're just trying to find flaws. We're just trying to, either we're doing that or we're stuck with the idea of permanence. And in the actuality, there's this like really sweet spot in the middle where it's like, not only can good enough be good enough, but also nothing is permanent. And I think that finding that spot in everything is probably a really healthy spot to be in, because I don't have space in my brain for the rest of that.
Well, it takes up so much capacity and energy it's a waste of energy. Cause I mean, when I've been on my journey, I'm like, okay, well, I can't run now. So I'm just going to fucking focus on the things that I can do. What else? Like, what else am I going to do? And that really helps. I love that.
I'm grinning from ear to ear here because I feel all of this so hard. Like, pay attention to what might be slowing down your process, and make sure that it's either something that you actually want to keep or something that is counterproductive that we can just toss so we can get on with our lives.
Wait, hold on. Is that where your confidence comes from then?
I think so, because I'm like the king of examples today, apparently. But a really good example would be when Instagram stories launched, I was one of those people who said, I will never be on this. I will never use this. This is stupid. Like, why would you put content out that goes away in 24 hours? But to be honest, it wasn't that. It was because I didn't want to show my face. It's because I wasn't super comfortable on social media yet. And then I realized there are people who have been on live television who have fallen on stage accepting awards, or, you know, been like attacked by an animal. Like, things happen, and that's not what those people are known for. I mean, maybe the lady who got hit by the goat that one time, but other than that, like, for the most part, those things don't define those people. And again, nothing is permanent. People will forget those things, or it'll actually make those things that you think are wrong or that you're embarrassed about are probably things people like about you. And I definitely had to learn, I had to drop the idea of perfection. I spent a lot of time in my life focused on perfection. And again, I don't have space for perfection in my life anymore. And my life is a lot bigger because of that.
Did the letting go of perfection really help you in your journey of internal love? Like loving yourself?
Oh, 100%. Because perfection and especially like perfection when it comes to like comparison traps was the thing that was keeping me back. It was the thing that told me I'm not doing enough. I could go onto social media and see like, oh, this certain blogger is drinking this certain, drink every night. I should be doing that too. And one of the things I have learned, one of my focuses this year has been my skin, because I'm 30. What year is it? I'm 31. I'll be 32 next month. And I am so like trying to be preventative about, getting older. And one of the things I definitely learned is two people can use the same product and get two very different results. Also, two people can use two different products and get the same results, because what works for some person may not work for you. And I think about that so much in the rest of my life that, I don't have to be the person who drinks that drink every night to get those results. I could just drink my water and shut up.
I love that so much. Like the cognizance of the fact that our path is absolutely our own, and everything that factors into the way we react to everything is uniquely ours. And to just adopt someone else's path wholesale would be a disservice to what we have to offer ourselves. That's huge.
And that's what I think our generation is waking up to, is that like, oh, there isn't just one path, and there are indeed infinite set of paths that we can move down and create on our own, that are really empowering and freeing in a lot of ways.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
I do think one of the downsides of that is we also expect a lot because of that. We expect a lot of politicians. We expect a lot of idols, actors, and actresses. We expect this like multifacetedness from everything, and we have to learn that like their path is their path and your path is your path. And so staying in your lane is super important when it comes to that. You can't expect them to know where your path is headed.
Yep.
Totally.
Just throwing that in there.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So question, you've also talked a couple times about this notion of graduating. What are you graduating from right now? Do you know?
You know, this year, I think has taught us all that we actually have no idea what's coming ever. But I do think that this year, what I have learned to be super comfortable with and what I'm graduating into, I guess I should say, is this level of comfort. I spent a lot of time trying to do more, trying to be more. And what I never really actually did was like found a space in my house where I just want to sit down and chill. You know, I've never had that, which was the inspiration behind redoing our bedroom. I was like, we did everything in this house because we wanted it to feel like a home. But what we didn't actually do was nest in it. And I never found my spot. And so this year, I mean, I work from home anyway, but now that my husband also works from home too, and we're like always in the house, I think that if I'm working towards anything, it's productivity is never more important than like finding my own stillness every single day. And sometimes I think that we get so wrapped up in like thinking about what the next project is or what's coming up. And I'm actually, I do have things that are coming up. I do have projects, but they're not more important than the things that I'm doing that fuel the rest and the recovery and the comfort.
Mm-hmm. What does your stillness look like and feel like?
So I mentioned earlier, I get up at around 6:30 every day. And like on the weekends, for instance, my husband doesn't get up to like 11. So that's a few hours of me usually in the kitchen, usually watching something on like Netflix, like on the TV far away, and cleaning or cleaning out the refrigerator, or sometimes sitting on my phone and playing a game. But basically just taking an opportunity where nothing else in the house is moving and I'm the only thing. Like I think about like a bunch of high-rise condos and there's one with the light on. Like, you know, for me, it's being the light that's on. And then the other part of it, there's very physical ones. Like every Friday night I take a bath. Like my husband games with his friends. And so he's downstairs talking to friends from all over the world. And I'm upstairs compartmentalized in the bathtub. And that's like my turn to like melt away everything from the week. But I think there's also just those daily things where it's like working out, for instance, is one of them. You know, I think some people work out to build muscle and strain and all that stuff. But when I think of why I work out, it's because it's like, oh, it's for me. It's an opportunity to be by myself, reset. I like to do things that I have to focus on. And then I like to do the workouts where I get to just get lost in my thoughts. And I like having a balance of both of those.
Well, and I feel like all of these feel-good self-care routines, the more you fall in love with yourself, the better decisions you'll make as it pertains to self-care. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think about when I wash my face and stuff every night, it takes me about 30 minutes. And my husband is like, why does that take you 30 minutes? And I was like, well, it's because I'm not just like sitting there doing it all back to back. I'm like washing my face, patting it dry, dancing to a song, taking a sip of water, brushing my teeth, maybe sitting on the bed and like staring at the wall for a few minutes. And then I'll do the next step. For me, it's like this ritual of I'm getting ready for bed and I'm telling my body I'm getting ready for bed, but I'm also doing it on my own time. I'm not rushed to get there. And it feels very restorative when I think about the fact that time really doesn't matter then.
Totally. And I feel like, I mean, I'm on my own journey of self-love internally as well. And I feel like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but the more I begin to love myself, the more I want to spend time with myself versus kind of always putting things on the to-do list. And I'm like, oh, actually, I will take 30 minutes to get ready for bed because I want to spend time with myself because I do love myself. Has that been your similar experience?
Yeah, I also had to recognize that RuPaul puts this really well. He says he's an introvert masquerading as an extrovert. And I would 100% feel that because while I am comfortable doing, putting myself on camera or being in front of large groups of people, the downside of that is when I'm done, I pull back so hard, like I have to recluse. And but what I've been focusing on this year is finding that happy medium, just to throw that in there. But that being said, I have had to recognize that alone time is part of my daily needs. And my husband is not that way. If he had it his way, we would sit on top of each other the whole time. And I'm just not that way. And so I think a part of that has also been not only loving myself, but also having enough respect for the people around me to communicate that, because then I don't feel shame around it. I don't feel like something is wrong with me for needing to spend 30 minutes sitting at the sink doing my face and all the other stuff. Instead, it's just understood by everyone that that's just what Jacob's going to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I love that.
As we approach the end of this conversation, we've got one question that we like to close with, and here it is. What do you know for sure?
I kind of already said this, but it's that nothing is permanent. And at the end of the day, we're allowed to make mistakes, and we can make mistakes and still be good people. What other people think of us doesn't matter, because their thoughts are not permanent either. And I had one more thing around permanence as I was thinking about that. But I think really just this idea that none of us are stuck where we are. We all have these places we can go to in our heads that do have growth, that we can change the habits around us, that do actually influence the rest of our lives. And I can also recognize that comes with a lot of privilege. I don't have kids. I don't have things that tie me down. But I think just that letting go of this idea of permanence is probably the biggest thing I've learned this year. And I think I know that really well.
Awesome.
I love you saying that as I'm literally looking outside and the leaves are falling. Like, we're all, everything's changing. And I think the journey of empowerment is that, right? The change, you're going to be different this year than you are next year, and who you were, when you were working at J. Crew or whatever. And that's such a powerful and freeing thought, because it's like, oh, I'm not stuck in this thought. I'm not stuck in this life style choice that I'm making right now. And I think that's really powerful.
For sure.
I've heard a lot of clarity of thought and clarity and movement between thought from you. And I want to thank you for that. So thank you for showing up today with yourself and for teaching us and for being you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jacob. We'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty.
This podcast is the work of Lightward, our company, named for that toward the light direction which informs every single thing that we do, including money. Which means, like everything else, the way we earn revenue is not based on industry norms. It's based on what feels deeply right and aligned by passing through the door that feels like it has more behind it, not less. And the way we keep this podcast going is all Lightward. It's pay what feels good. It's an exchange of value between you and us. We're keeping conventional podcast advertising totally out of this. And here's how pay what feels good works. We give you this episode because it feels good to do so. And you consider, honestly, what number of dollars this episode is genuinely worth to you. I do not care if that's $3, $1,000, or literally $0 and a heart emoji, as long as that trade genuinely makes your day better. And the energy there is the entire point. That is what we're building our business on. No advertisers, no selling your attention, just you and us, trading value in a way that builds us both up. So whatever the number, when you're done listening, head to empoweredhumanacademy.com and hit the Pay What Feels Good button. We use this policy across all of our company's work, and I'm really excited to bring it here to the world of podcasts. This is us voting for the world that we want to see. Thank you for being here.